G'day guys, well I'm just in the first shed here. I am making some snares for my power rams, so I thought I'd take you guys along and show you how I do it. So first and foremost, the cable I'm using is 1x7 3/64 cable. They recommend 47 inches, I always cut mine at 46. I make it just an inch shorter in the hopes that there's a little more torque from the ram itself on the Coyote, maybe putting the Coyote down a little quicker. So the hardware we're going to use today to make this is we're going to use a 1/16 of an inch ferrule, a 3/32 ferrule, a flat washer, and a heat treated nut. So I'll show you guys how I do it. So first I'll run my 1/16 of an inch ferrule on, and then I will find how the cable lays naturally, and I'll put a bend in it on itself, give or take, give it about an inch, maybe a hair more, and then I hammer the ferrule on. Then I'll take my lead end and I'll run it through my loop. And first to go on is your heat treated nut, then your washer, then your other ferrule. So I have a mark that I put on my table here. It's 2.5 inches. So again, leaving my cable lay naturally. Put a bend in it. And then I'll just run everything on here. So I was going to buy a swager, but with a swager I'm not able to crush this heat treated nut. I can only do the ferrules, so I was going to consider buying a snare press. When with that I'd be able to do the heat treated nut and I'd be able to do both ferrules. How I done it in the past is I've hammered them on the railroad track, and sometimes if you don't hit them square, that nut will roll, and I buggered it up where I couldn't use the snare and had to throw them out. So I started using my vise. It takes a lot longer. I shouldn't say a lot longer. It takes a little bit longer, but you end up with a way nicer product in my mind. So when I use my vise, I squish the shit out of them. With the ferrules I won't do it, but with that heat treated nut I squish the hell out of it. And you can see how nice and neat and clean that is. That crushed just perfect. They're nice and tight, the snare wire in there. So then I'll pull my ferrule back. And I'll just hammer it closed. So I have a nice big loop for my lap link. I have about an inch space in between there. This one might be a little small. The ferrule came down on me a little bit, but usually I'll make this loop just a hair smaller. But that'll work just fine. Another thing I thought I'd show you guys is how I do my support wires. So this is just a piece of 18 gauge stovepipe wire. So I'll just put a J in it, and I'll run that J through that loop onto that ferrule, and then I'll just hold it tight with the pliers. And I make 2 tight wraps around the back side of that ferrule, and then I'll hold it again on that heat treated nut. And what I'll do here is just make my loops or wraps around. This way I can set my snare kind of any which direction, or turn it if it's not hanging true on the trail or over the trail. I don't count my wraps or anything, I just kind of eyeball it, so that's about right. Now I leave a good sized tag in. That one's just a hair too long, so I'll cut it a little bit. So I leave it long enough so my loop can't go over top, and I always leave it 90 degrees. So when I have my bridge here, my washer goes free. Make sure that that wire is straight over top of your snare wire, so that when it sits down in the trigger it doesn't give you any problems. The other reason why I put these on right away is I boil these snares in baking soda and water to take the shine off the snare itself. And in that process it'll also take the oil and machine grease off of this wire. They'll still smell the The wire may be a little bit, like the metal itself, but they're definitely not going to smell that oil, and I think that oil smell is going to be a lot stronger than the smell of that wire. So that is a completed snare. I've run my support wire attached to my ram arm before, and yes, it works. And if you guys are using it that way and it works great for you, that's perfect. But this is kind of how I prefer. It's a lot more work to piss around and do it this way. But when you're hammering through the bush, it's a quick way to set, easy way to set. So it seems to work pretty good for me. The other thing I do with wolf rams, I build them the same way, obviously, but the snare wire is longer. So I'll set if the trail's coming this way, I got my tree, instead of putting my ram this way, I'll actually put my ram on the back side of the tree, opposite of the trail, and then I will bend my snare at 90 degrees because they are longer, and I'll bend it right over the trail, so then no matter which direction the wolf, or I guess not wolf, but the coyote comes, he won't see the snare right on front of him beside the tree. It'll actually be on the side. So the reason I put a J there and wrap this around twice is if I don't do it that way, say my ram is crooked a little bit, so my snare is going to hang crooked. This way I can twist it and straighten that snare wire so it hangs perfect on the trail. If I didn't lock it in like this, the snare wire would just turn inside of that support wire, and that wouldn't work, so there'd be kind of no point to it. But yeah, that's how I make them. So thanks guys, till the next time.